Good evening and welcome to Very Interesting. I'm 𝐍𝐢𝐜𝐾𝐃, your host. We have a great show for you this evening featuring two very accomplished Missouri women. Our feature interview is with Missouri State Auditor Nicole Galloway, who is a Democratic candidate for governor. But first, I got to sit down with Meagan Caldwell to talk about her interesting life. I'd like to welcome a new face to Very Interesting. I'd like to welcome Meagan Caldwell. Meagan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me on here.
I don't really know what we're going to talk about because there's so many things to talk about, right?
There is a lot. I have a lot of things that keep me very busy.
So Meagan's going to start a new segment in season 3. We don't know the name of that show yet. It's either going to be called Meagan's Adventures or Meagan's Hobbies. We would like the audience to name Meagan's show. And you don't have to say Meagan. You can also say Meg. So Meg's Adventures, Meg's Hobbies. We're looking for a name of the show. She has so many, and it encompasses so many different things, inside and out. We're going to talk about a few of those things. Before we do that, Meagan, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? Where do you call home?
Well, I am originally from 𝐍𝐜𝐂𝐃. I've lived there my entire life. Right now, I'm currently in the process of moving over to Piggott, Arkansas, but right now, still in 𝐍𝐜𝐂𝐃.
Why would you want to leave this great state?
It's not that far, only 8 miles on the other side.
So you're not going very far.
Right.
So Meagan, how many hobbies or adventures do you have or do you go on in a year's time?
A lot. Too many to count, honestly. It's a wide range of different things also. I don't even know how to even keep count of everything. Every weekend I have a different thing that I'm doing or something else that's keeping me busy.
I know last weekend you were at a craft show at Reelfoot Lake. A few months ago you went on a kayak adventure over 3 or 4 states, deer hunting, turkey hunting.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite adventures that you went on myself is, I would never do it because I'm too chicken, is you went noodling in Illinois. Tell us a little bit about noodling.
So it was, my dad actually was the one that was going, and he invited me to go along with him to see if I want to do it. I'm not a good swimmer, so I was a little nervous about it at first. I went ahead and I got to go in the spot of the lake where it was only about just above my knees, so it wasn't as bad. Although there is still a hole you have to dive in. I kind of had a little bit of problems when I was doing it just because I have such short little arms that I couldn't hardly reach up in there, but I eventually got it. We ended up, I think I had about a 25-pound catfish when we got done with it.
So you reached in a hole that you didn't know what anything was in and pulled a catfish out with your arm?
We knew something was in there, just didn't know what it was exactly, and luckily it was just a catfish. You're
a brave soul. That catfish was taller than you, I'm sure.
Yeah, when I was holding it up, it was almost the same size of my body, so.
So do you enjoy noodling?
I do. I don't know if I would do it every day like some people do. I had some pretty big bruises from doing it, but it's fun to do every now and then. I would maybe do it 1 or 2 more times.
It seems like you could stick your hand in that hole and get a snake. Is that possible?
It is.
Was there any snakes out there?
Yeah, when we were cruising around out there on the lake, there were several snakes swimming around, but luckily snakes don't bother me too bad. I just don't like the surprise factor.
Doesn't sound fun to me.
It wasn't bad.
Meg, you do a lot of different hunting. What types of hunting do you do?
Well, big deer hunter. Turkey hunting's probably one of my favorites. We also just do like frogging. We go squirrel hunting. We go fishing. Just pretty much anything you can think of. I've never killed a wild hog or anything, but I would like to. That's one on my bucket list.
They're coming this way. They're coming this way.
I'm worried they're going to end up here.
So what other outside adventures? You just went, like I said, on a 3 or 4 state kayak. You went kayaking in many different states.
Right. I enjoy kayaking quite a bit. We like to go over to Bullshoes Lake and go to White River. That's one of my favorite places to go. On this vacation that we took this summer, the best place that we ended up at was Rainbow River in Florida, and it's kind of known for having crystal clear waters, and during the winter months there's manatees that swim up in there and you can just see all the way to the bottom. It was gorgeous.
So you also, besides the outdoors, you're an outdoors person, outdoor woman, I guess, not an outdoorsman.
Right.
So you also do many different crafts. You also do your own flooring. You do your own construction work.
Yeah.
Are you also a mechanic? Do you work on vehicles too?
I haven't. We did remodel our house. We did a lot of it ourselves. This house that we're building right now, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of the interior ourselves. So hopefully we'll be able to show some of that. Also crafts. I do a lot. It just depends. Sometimes my interests change. I like to paint. I do have a vinyl cutter, so I like to do different things with that as well. One of them is this cotton bell here that we like, just a little mini cotton bell that we've come up with. And I also like gardening, and I like to grow plants. So.
Well, the cotton bells you just started making recently, how many of those have you actually made? I know you've had some long days with that.
I'm not sure our total right now. Last time I counted it was over 80, but I'm not sure where we're at.
So you've been taking these to craft shows, or you're building your online presence soon, I think. You said you're going to have a website?
Yeah. Hopefully we'll have a website available for these different types of fabric, and they also go along with, you know, different seasons. We'll have some Christmas ones coming up soon. That way people can order them, have a little bit of Southeast Missouri cotton in their house.
So a company could also get their company name put on many, many different bells, correct?
Right. We can do custom orders if somebody wanted it. Not sure where they'd want it. We just have to do it based off of their opinion, what they think would look best.
But Megan, another thing that's near and dear to your heart is succulents. You love growing succulents. Is it because they're easier, they're hard, or what?
They're a little bit easier than a normal houseplant. They can be ignored for a while, and that's why most people like to have them in their house. They don't require as much water. They're all just drought-resistant type of plants, and they can be grown pretty easily. Each one of these little leaves on this plant right here can produce another one. So that's pretty much what I've done right there. So you can have several based off of just one plant if you wanted to. But like I said, most people like them because you can put them in a window and they only have to be watered once every few weeks. So it's easy maintenance.
Her show will be about all things what Megan does in a year's time. She's going to start documenting that for us. If you don't know how to put flooring down, she's going to show you. If you don't know how to give us an example, Meg. What are you putting up in your house? You putting up drywall? You doing the drywall?
Yeah, sheetrock painting, so hopefully some tile, just different things.
Thanks, Meg. Thanks for coming. I'm looking forward to seeing what Meg has to show us over the next year. And now for our feature interview this week. We are fortunate to have State Auditor Nicole Galloway take time out of her busy schedule to join us right here in the studio. And welcome to Barry Interesting. I'm your host, Barry 𝐄𝐀𝐃. Today's guest is
Nicole Galloway.
Thank you for saying that. Nicole Galloway, she's our state auditor, and she's the Democratic candidate for governor. We're going to get into some issues, and we're going to get to know Nicole a little bit better. I've known you for about 6 years now. Done a great job as state auditor, but tell us a little bit about yourself, where you live, and your family.
Yeah, absolutely, and thanks for having me here. I'm really thrilled to do this. So I grew up in St. Louis, I grew up in Fenton, and my mom's a nurse, my dad's an engineer for a general contractor. I didn't grow up in a political family at all. I mean, politics was just not something that we did when I was growing up. I went to Rolla, and I have degrees in applied mathematics and economics, and I also went to Mizzou and have my MBA, and I'm a CPA and a certified fraud examiner. I worked in the private sector for years as an auditor before ever getting into public service, and I started as treasurer in Boone County at the local level. And look, at the local level, and you know this, people do not care about politics at all. They want solutions, they want you to fix their problems, and it was a great introduction to public service for me. I still live in Columbia now. I have for about 10 years or so with my husband, John, and we have 3 kids that are, William is 8, Ben is 7, and baby Joseph, as I call him, is 3 years old.
My name is William, so thank you for naming your son after me.
It's what I had in mind.
So, Nicole, When did you realize that you had a passion for politics? You said you didn't grow up in a political family. When did you realize that you had politics in your blood?
You know, I first looked at public office as public service, not as politics. And I had worked in the private sector for years, and the position of treasurer of Boone County opened up. And I thought, you know, I could use the skills that I had developed in the private sector to help improve the community around me. That really was as simple as that. And growing up in St. Louis and as a young adult and a teenager, public service was always something that was important to me. I was involved in Girl Scouts. I did service projects in high school and in college and on. And so I just thought this as a foray into that. And I always thought too, if I wasn't good as a public servant, I mean, who knows a one-term county treasurer from Boone? Nobody, right? If it didn't work out, I could fade into the background like it never happened. But it turned out that I was passionate about it. I found ways to be very effective in my office, but also responsibilities outside of my office, and kind of figured out how the system worked, saw how it worked well, and also what needed to be changed.
So we had a tragic event when Tom 𝐍𝐤𝐜𝐸 passed away as our state auditor. He was actually running for governor at the time, I believe. What year was that?
2015.
And you got the call after he passed away you got appointed to be our state auditor.
That's right. So, I mean, when Auditor 𝐍𝐤𝐜𝐸 passed away, I mean, that was just a true loss for our whole state. You know, it was an honor to serve as state auditor and fill his very large shoes and his reputation. I was appointed by Governor Nixon in 2015 and basically served an entire term until I ran for my second term in 2018. And as state auditor, it's my job to root out government waste, fraud, and abuse. And I have found a lot of it. I mean, I've identified over $370 million in government waste and abuses. And because of my audits, 63 criminal counts have been brought against corrupt public officials in this state, Democrats and Republicans. Because I don't think it matters who you are, what party you're from. You should be held accountable for the decisions that you're making with people's money and the decisions you're making on behalf of the public.
Well, let's talk about your family a little bit and your decision-making process when you decided to run for governor. Because if running for state auditor wasn't enough, I'm sure that wasn't a teetotally pleasant conversation when you looked your husband in the eye and said, I've conquered this state auditor's job, I'm running for governor now. So how did your family, your husband react when you said, I'm running for the highest office in Missouri?
I mean, I couldn't do this without their support. I mean, truly, this is, it's so encompassing, and there's so much to do to be successful in a campaign while also being state auditor and being a mom. I could not do this without the support system that I have, from my mom and dad who are semi-retired to my husband, and really some of our neighbors and the community support that we have as a family. So I am very blessed. You know, I think for my husband and myself, we have seen some of the decisions in Jefferson City and realized how badly they've been hurting people. You know, Governor Parson kicked 100,000 kids off their health insurance, and I have visited with these kids, I've visited with their moms. That was devastating for them. And it all happened because someone in charge in Jefferson City, who they've never met, made this choice on their behalf. And I've seen that over and over and over again. As state auditor, I have seen that the system is broken and just not working for people. And, you know, I want to fix that. I want to make choices that consider them and make their lives better. And my husband is totally in support of that. You
know, if you win, your husband will be a first, and you'll be a first, the first female governor in the state of Missouri. He'll be the first, I guess you call it a first man?
First man, first gentleman.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's going to be quite an honor.
It is an honor. I mean, it's an honor to serve in any capacity and represent the people in this state. You know, I am running for governor and I'm a woman. I am not running for governor because I'm a woman. I certainly bring that perspective as a mom and some of my own personal experiences to my decision making and to the table. But I would also be the first fraud examiner that was served as governor, and I think that's pretty needed now too.
Let's get into the politics of this a little bit, some of the issues. Governor Parson withheld funds to Missouri school districts in April and June, but I don't want to just blame Governor Parson. All governors do it. That's kind of the easiest place to reduce the money. So how can we protect our schools and not be the first one to get cut every single time?
Education has been on the chopping block year after year after year, and it started, as you mentioned, Barry, years ago. And it's just a place that continues to get cut because education has not been a priority in the legislature. When there are revenue giveaways, when there are loopholes and new exemptions that are given away, when people's tax money are just given away, that means we are not investing in education. And those loopholes and giveaways are not making our schools any better. They're not making our children ready to enter today's workforce. And so as state auditor, as I said, I've seen some of these loopholes. I think we should close them, get our tax revenue back so we can invest in K through 12 education. COVID, though, is the biggest threat to our state and local budgets because the economic impact of COVID has been so significant. In order to reverse these immediate cuts, we need a governor that will act with urgency to fight this virus, to contain the spread of the virus, so folks can get back to work, we can get our economy going again, and we can reverse the damages to the budget that have happened over the past year.
Yes, some of this is not Governor Parsons' fault. Some of it's just because our tax bill, we're not bringing in any taxes right now because the economy's been shut down for a while.
But I would say that he hasn't taken action to restore our economy. Our positivity rate for COVID this past week was 17%. 17%. Our hospitalizations are up across our state. Ventilator use is up across our state. And this week we learned that almost 70,000 Missourians have left the labor market. They're just not looking for a job anymore because there's no jobs to be had in Parsons' COVID economy. You look at other states, that's not happening. Their positivity rates are under 5. Their schools are open again. If our schools are closed for in-person learning, parents can't go back to work. So these things are dependent upon each other. So containing the spread of the virus will be the most important thing we can do to get our economy jump-started.
What does fully funding the education formula mean? I've asked many politicians recently what that is, and it seems like I've got many different answers. I don't even think the politicians in Jeff City know what formula they're funding, and I think that's a moving target. I mean, it's 480 million, it's 200 million. So do you actually understand the formula? Because I have not met the first person who actually can explain it to me.
It's complicated. I mean, let's just address that. And I think part of the reason that folks have a hard time explaining it is because it has changed over time, and there's been turnover in Jefferson City with our legislature. And so new legislators coming in, or those that have only been there for a short period of time, may not fully understand that. And so just to be very simple about it, the foundation formula is supposed to be the formula to fully funding education for our kids. So no matter where they live in the state, no matter their zip code, they're provided funding by the state that will provide an adequate and equitable education. And it has been a really long time, years, maybe decades, since the foundation formula was fully funded. There was always a gap. There's always been a gap. So when the foundation formula was first put in place, the bar for equitable educational opportunities was high. It was up here because it does take resources to recruit good teachers, right? And to provide the resources that kids need. The legislature could never meet that high bar. So all they did was adjust the formula to lower the bar to the exact amount they could actually afford. Then they started sending out press releases and tweets saying, we fully funded the education formula. But it does nothing to address the gap, the true need to fully educate kids in our state. So the bar has been lowered over time, but it's pretty arbitrary. It's lowered just to the amount of revenue that the state has, so it provides a talking point to politicians in Jefferson City that they're funding education.
It seems like that's all it is, a talking point. I visited with State Senator-elect Jason Bean several times. He's been on the show twice, and I've asked him and his opponents the exact same question. All politicians claim that we need education, but education for what? It seems like there's not a pot of gold at the end of the educational process. I feel like we're educating students for something that's sometimes not there. For example, State Senator-elect Jason Bean, it's near and dear to his heart to have a vocational training center here in Southeast Missouri. Everybody's not cut out for college. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, we have a big demand for heating and air conditioning personnel, plumbing, electrician. Those would be high-paying jobs here right now. You can't hardly find one here right now. So just address the question of What are we educating our students for? Are we educating them for what?
I think that's a great point. We should be educating our kids so they can be the skilled, trained workers that our employers need. Not only will they then be able to find jobs and be able to support themselves and have opportunity for themselves and for their families, but our employers will have the skilled and trained workers that they need to succeed so they can grow their business. And I love the conversation about vocational training and trade schools, because college is not for everybody, nor should it be. You know, I believe that folks should have an opportunity, and that opportunity can look different for every single kid in this state. That's okay. We don't want a template, right? Certain kids are good at some things. They're going to go to a four-year school or maybe grad school. Some kids are going to go to get a skill or a trade and be very, very successful in doing that. And so we need to incentivize and encourage all of that. To me, that's what education really does mean.
And I want to take up for Missouri school teachers right now, because they're going through a lot right now. My kids are learning virtually, so that means that teacher has to teach that class to the students in the class. They're also having to put something online for my kids and other kids that are virtual. But I'm sick and tired of our teachers being 48th in pay. So Governor Nixon, Governor Blunt, you name it, we always talk about it. Governor Parson, we always talk about it. We never do anything about it. And I'm sick and tired of our teachers being mistreated. Our teachers make $2 an hour by the time they go to a basketball game, work the concession stand. So I want to take up for the local teachers, and teachers are a big voting bloc here in Southeast Missouri. So I want you to talk directly to the teachers out here. What can a governor do to get their pay up where they're not making $2 to $4 an hour? Because it's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And look, this increase starting pay, teacher starting pay has not increased in 15 years. And we know that teachers are oftentimes have one or two jobs on the side, and they're digging into their own pocket for school supplies, for food for their kids in the classroom. This is not sustainable, and we do not pay teachers a wage that values the work that they do. It also hurts our rural districts' ability to attract and retain good teachers. We see school districts going down to 4-day school weeks as the only recruiting tool that they have, so they can actually have teachers in the classroom when they're needed. And this was all before COVID. Now you've mentioned all the things. My kids are going online as well. Again, this is about prioritizing education in our state government. And I believe that it's been a talking point, but there hasn't been action. Governor Parson did commission a study that showed that teachers need increased pay. And instead of implementing the own recommendations from his own administration, he pointed back down to each individual school district and said, man, you better figure it out on your own. Well, these school districts have been telling Jefferson City what they need. They need resources and they need guidance, particularly in the midst of COVID. When the politicians in Jefferson City give away $600 million in special interest giveaways for how out-of-state corporations recognize interstate sales, well, no wonder we can't fully fund the education formula and get it back to where it needs to be. No wonder we can't pay teachers a wage that values the work that they do, because we're giving money away that does nothing to help our education system, nothing to help the people in this state have a better life. I know why people are sick of politics. I know why people feel like the system is broken and that it's rigged, because in many ways it really is.
How can you get the teachers' pay raised?
Well, I would look to implement the study that had buy-in from teachers across the state that Governor Parson did, but is letting sit on a shelf. I would implement it to increase starting teacher pay. The bill is not that high, and that means saying no to no-bid contracts. It would mean saying no to loopholes. It would be vetoing bills that have these significant giveaways and closing the loopholes that currently do exist. Budgets are about priorities, just plain and simple. You know, government has a limited amount of resources, as it should. So within those limited resources, Right now, our government is not prioritizing the things that really matter to people, like education, like starting pay for teachers and others. And so that means saying no to the things that provide no value and saying yes to the things that do.
What would you do as governor to improve health care for children, especially since Missouri voters overwhelmingly voted to expand Medicaid in Missouri?
That's right. Voters have said that they want affordable, accessible health care. That's why people voted to expand Medicaid in August. And what Medicaid expansion does is provide health insurance for working Missourians. These are folks that have 1 job, 2 jobs. They just don't get health insurance through their private employer. And so this is a huge win for working people because they will finally have health insurance. But having health insurance does not necessarily mean you have access to health care. We have seen our rural hospitals close in this area. We have seen clinics close in this area. With Medicaid expansion, because folks will then be insured instead of uninsured, we can keep our rural hospitals open and open clinics. So whether you're a child on Medicaid or a child on your parents' insurance, you can actually seek the care that you need. Additionally, Medicaid expansion will bring $2 billion per year into our state. $2 billion per year. This is the biggest economic development opportunity the state has ever seen. It is estimated that it's going to create 16,000 jobs per year for the first 5 years. And the majority of those jobs are estimated to be outside of St. Louis and Kansas City, in this part of the state, in rural parts of the state. Because think, if we're opening up a clinic or opening up a healthcare facility, that means you're going to have folks in the healthcare industry that are going to get jobs. But you're also going to have janitors. You're also going to have folks that do laundry. You're going to have a coffee shop that opens up right next door so patients can stop in or healthcare workers can stop in. You know, the economic development opportunity is significant, but only if it's implemented in the right way. Governor Parson opposes Medicaid expansion, and this is just the shot in the arm that our state needs in the midst of this pandemic. If you look at the other states that have expanded Medicaid, including Republican ones, I mean, Mike Pence, our vice president, expanded Medicaid.
John Kasich, I believe, in Ohio.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so this is not a partisan issue once Medicaid expansion happens, because these states have seen significant benefits. They've seen economic opportunity. They have people that are insured. It has been positive to their state budget. You know, there's this false talking point by Republicans that you have to increase taxes or gut other accounts like education if we have Medicaid expansion. That doesn't happen in other states. And here in Missouri, we have nonpartisan studies that have looked at Missouri-specific data and has shown that it's either budget neutral, but in the long run, it saves our state billions of dollars. But if you take it down to the individual level, if you take it down to that mom that's working, you know, 2 jobs, she doesn't have health care, she has an accident, she has COVID, she gets sick, that's one medical emergency away from total financial ruin. Total financial ruin. What does that mean for her kids, and for her family? One of the biggest determinants of economic upward mobility is access to health care because of the financial consequences. We cannot afford not to expand Medicaid in this state.
Nicole, small businesses in the state of Missouri are hurting right now. What can you do to stimulate this recovery after COVID? And what's your plan to move forward?
Yeah, small businesses are hurting right now because of COVID. And for a lot, they were making it day to day or week to week before this crisis. And they were doing everything right. They were doing everything that they were supposed to do. But now they're shuttered their doors. They fired employees through no fault of their own because they've been hurt by this pandemic. And we have seen at the national level some relief programs that have been passed, like PPP, that haven't trickled down to some of our smallest businesses on Main Street. These are businesses, they don't have an accountant on staff, right? They don't have an attorney on staff. Their wife or their spouse are doing QuickBooks in the evenings after they've worked all day. And so we need better relief for these folks. Right now, in the state of Missouri, there's about $1 billion in CARES Act money that is just sitting at the state level, not being utilized to fight this virus, to contain the spread of the virus so we can get these businesses open again, but also not providing direct relief to these businesses. It makes no sense to me why we would sit on $1 billion of recovery aid and not deploy it in a way that helps our small businesses get through this. Because every one of those small businesses employs someone in the community. That business stabilizes the community.
So where's that $1 billion sitting, and how's it disseminated, or how's it supposed to be disseminated? Where's the money at?
Yeah, so the way that it works is, or the way that it has worked is, that back in March this spring, in a very overwhelmingly bipartisan way, which is sometimes unique to see in DC these days, they passed the CARES Act, and that's a relief package that was sent to the states. Missouri received $2 billion worth. Governor Parson sent some to the counties, but then has basically sat on the majority of the rest with no plans to deploy these resources to schools, to our colleges and universities, to our small businesses, to first responders. I have these conversations all the time with folks that are on the front lines of fighting this virus and are not receiving the resources needed to do so, even though all that money is just sitting there with no plan to use it. The troubling thing is that this money is supposed to be given back at the end of the year.
Yeah,
So,
I think that scared the county commissioners to not spend it. It's really hurt some of the schools. The schools are wondering when they're going to get this,
right.
and they're all mad at the county commissioners. And the county commissioners act like it's their money, and they're scared to spend it. But I think the administration's got the commissioners scared to spend the money.
Well, they're not receiving a lot of guidance on how to use this money, and so it's just stuck. It's stuck at the local level, it's stuck at the state level, and I don't believe in just writing a check to something and then walking away from it. They need help. They need help. These are, the folks at the local level, they're not public health experts. They're not epidemiologists. That expertise is somewhere else in government. And so as governor, I would be much more engaged on the local needs in the community to provide the resources necessary to fight this virus. If we don't spend that money by the end of the year, it's supposed to go back to the federal government. I hope that the federal government will come together in a bipartisan way to allow us to lapse that money into next year, because this crisis is not over. People are feeling it. Some folks are at the edge of desperation. We need to help these folks so they do not fall through the cracks down to a place they'll never get out of. We need to help our small businesses so they don't fall through the cracks and never recover from this.
You started off way behind. You've kind of caught up. Most of the pundits think you're closing right now. The governor's still ahead. He's got the power of the incumbency. Where do you really feel like the state of play is as of today?
We have the momentum in this race. This race is very close. We did start from behind. I always knew that would be the case, but we have completely closed the gap, and we showed this race in the margin of error. I think it's also noteworthy that Governor Parson's approval rating has dropped about 22 points over the last several months because of his failed handling of COVID, his failed leadership. This crisis has been the biggest test of leadership a governor could possibly imagine, and it's clear on all points that he has failed and that folks want to change. The other thing that I'd mention is that Biden and Trump are much closer this time than what they were in 2016. That race is likely to be within single digits, and so that means for folks like me on the ballot, there's a wider path to success. So we'll continue to charge ahead over the next 2 weeks before this election and bring my message of independence and putting Jefferson City back on the side of working people. I will bring that message all across the state. You know,
we talked about the Medicaid expansion map of just in August. I mean, I feel like Medicaid expansion would win by a wider margin in November in the upcoming election. So is that kind of your strategy? Without giving your strategy away, is that your strategy?
Well, we know that there are independent-minded voters out there, folks that swing back and forth on the ballot depending on the candidate and depending on the issues that they are currently facing in their lives. And when you look at Medicaid expansion, it won by, as you said, about 6 points. That's the same margin that I won in 2018, and it won in very many of the same places that I won in 2018. Not just in our urban areas. It won in outstate Missouri as I did. And so there is a path. There are folks that are tired of the status quo. They're ready for someone to fight for them. They're ready for someone to stand up for them. And you know, folks say Medicaid expansion only passed because of St. Louis and Kansas City. That's not true. If hundreds of thousands of voters in outstate didn't vote for Medicaid expansion or didn't vote for me in 2018, neither would have been successful. Those voters are out there, and you better believe that we are communicating directly with them because their vote matters. Every vote in this election matters.
Part of this show is trying to promote civility in politics. There's a lot of anger out there. So tell me something good about Mike Parson.
Oh, you know, again, I don't think that Mike Parson is a bad person or anything like that. I certainly don't believe that. You know, I think that he's not the right person to lead our state forward. You know, he clearly is dedicated to his family, and as am I, and so I can really relate to that, being caring for his spouse and for his children. You know, I feel that, I mean, obviously I feel that same way, and so there are certainly things that can bring us together.
Well, Nicole, thank you for being very interesting. It was an honor to have you here today. I want to wish you the best in the campaign. And Nicole Galloway, she's our state auditor. She's interviewing for the job as governor. She's a Democratic candidate for governor for the state of Missouri. And Nicole, I'm going to give you the last word to the voters.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I really enjoyed our conversation. And, you know, what I would say is I am running for governor to put Jefferson City back on the side of working families and to act with urgency to protect our fellow Missourians. The most important thing the next governor will have to do is contain this virus and rebuild Missouri's economy. The question is, will we rebuild in a way that helps working people get back on their feet? Or will we continue to ignore science, distract, and rebuild only for well-connected special interests? Governor Parson has been in Jefferson City for almost 2 decades. If he had a plan for our most pressing problems, we would have seen it already. He's failed the test of leadership, and I believe that it's time for a change.
Nicole, thank you for coming to the show. It's an honor having you here today. We've offered Governor Parson equal time. He had a scheduling conflict, and he won't be able to make it, but we look forward to the upcoming election. And Nicole, we wish you the best.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for another episode of Very Interesting. We will be taking a week off next week to watch the election and then be back with you on November 12th with another episode featuring State Representative and Republican candidate for State Senate, Holly Rader. We'll see you next time, and don't forget to vote.